This man, this thing, this card, this mother. We got to talk about Man-Thing, everybody. Man-Thing is going to be the new card coming to Marvel Snap. A 4/5 ongoing 1, 2, or 3 cost cards here get -2 power. I am stoked for this card. This is my most anticipated card, not because I think it's going to be the strongest. In fact, it just might be the weakest card of the month. We're about to find out. But it looks like the most fun, or at least it's right up my alley. I love the junk decks, the stuff decks, the slap decks, all that fun stuff. It's so entertaining to me. Thrown over those goblins, and now we get to throw over the green goblin and give him another -2. It's so nice. I'm excited for Ted here, Man-Thing, to join the game. And we got this Dan Hip. I love the Dan Hip. That's a new surprise from the latest patch. So anyways, I'm pretty stoked for this card, but we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about the mechanics, some counters, some deck lists that are brewed up, and I'm going to give you guys an idea in this video whether you should snap on the card when it's released or if you should pass on it. Now, I will tell you right now that it's only 3,000 tokens. It's going to be a Series 4 release, which is pretty nice. It's the only Series 4 release this month, so not too shabby. And look at the spotlight caches. We got Lady Deathstrike and Silver Samurai. Those are 2 Series 5 cards that have come out fairly recently. Recent enough that I don't even own them. I don't own these 2 cards, so this is cash money for me to use my spotlight caches and get a couple of new toys to play with. Then, of course, you got your 1,000 tokens. That's another option. Boo, that kind of is a little bit of a bummer. But anyways, that is what you got available to you. And some pretty fire variants, by the way. I love those 2 variants for those 2 cards. That's what you got in the spotlight caches. This is your new card coming to Marvel Snap. Let's talk about Man-Thing's mechanics. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is that this is a reciprocal aura effect, okay? All 1, 2, 3 cost cards are going to be affected by the -2 modifier. Now, this is on your side of the board, your opponent's side of the board, but all at that one location, they're all getting smacked, not 0 cost or anything like that. Also, if a card was discounted, it's not going to be affected by Man-Thing. This is really important to note because there's cards like Miles Morales that gets discounted when you move a card on the prior turn. It goes to 1. Stature gets discounted to 1 if your opponent has discarded a card that game. Now, just because they're 1, you play them as 1 cost cards. When they do hit that board, they're going to show as their original base stat line. So we know this because of Killmonger, right? You can play Killmonger when those cards are on the board. He is not going to destroy them. That'd be a nice little tweak and make Killmonger really powerful and really nerf these cards, but that's not how it works. So if they do get played at the Man-Thing location, they're not going to get hit by that -2 modifier. Same with cards that are beasted back to the hand, Sarah discounting things, Loki discounting things, Quinjet discounting things. They all going to avoid this card's effect, okay? So that is inherently a counter for Man-Thing. Another thing is that it's a non-permanent debuff. It's an aura, right? It's an ongoing effect that is administering a negative debuff. We can think of it kind of like in a reversed action is Blue Marvel, Kazar, right? These cards that are giving plus power, positive power across the board, but these are aura effects that could be disabled with Enchantress and then the power goes away. For instance, if you use Nightcrawler at the Man-Thing location, it's looking like 0 power, you can move him off. He'll retain his base 2 power. Another way is if you have Deadpool and it got destroyed at the Man-Thing location, right? So he was a 1/1, you destroy it, you wanted it to be a 1/2 when it goes back to the hand. Good news for you, will be a 1/2 when it goes back to your hand. Let's say you used Venom on that card, he will absorb the 1 power that Deadpool originally had, but then he's going to get smacked with the -2 modifier from Man-Thing, okay? And then previously, like I was saying, you bounce a card back with Beast, it will not carry that -2 modifier. It's an aura, it's only hitting cards when they're actually on the board at that location, meeting those conditions. Aside from that, this is kind of an effect that we're already fairly familiar with in Marvel Snap. There's ways of giving out negative afflicted power, but there hasn't really been an aura, an ongoing effect that has done this, except for I think Soulstone would be the only one that comes to mind. So very similar to Soulstone, but reciprocal and giving out -2. Now, Soulstone's a really powerful card. It's pretty good, especially when it used to draw a card. Now it doesn't anymore. It's a bit of a bummer, but hey, maybe there's a negative affliction deck with Thanos that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But here we got some pros and cons. Okay, so some of the pros that I see with this card is that it has a high upside. You afflict 1 or 2 cards, you're getting a really good return because that, if we added that as power, right, to his card, 2 4 power, it becomes very quickly a 4/7, a 4/9 in net value. And that is really good. But it's gonna have to happen that way, I think, to really get the power, the value out of Man-Thing. Because if you're not hitting, I want to say 2 cards. We could compare this to something like Jessica Jones or Rescue that can get to 8 or 9 power respectively, with fairly easier conditions to meet, right? Not relying on your opponent playing cards into this location. Now, there's other ways, which is why I have surprise right there. Because I could see this, you're playing against that bounce deck, that aggressive deck, and you just wait until turn 6, turn 5, a later turn when they've already established 2, 3, maybe even 4 cards at that location, and you hit them with the Man-Thing, which is actually very relevant with Elsa taking bounce decks, taking those aggressive decks to new heights right now. Man-Thing might be the hero for at least a week or a little bit of time. So a strong addition to junk decks, good surprise, a fairly decent counter for the meta right now. It's going to farm those aggressive bounce decks. I kind of like Man-Thing for the meta right now. Now, I don't think he's going to be the number 1 card and swing the matchup, because a lot of those cards have power that can bounce around. You can bring the Kitty Pryde back and decide to play it elsewhere outside of the Man-Thing location. So that's a bit concerning. And then I also don't like that bigger cards like America Chavez that's typically run that deck, or anything that's big, higher power, if it gets played in the Man-Thing location, it just doesn't even care about its effect. And it's going to likely have more power than Man-Thing himself. So it's something you got to kind of watch out for. You can't just hope that you leave him in the lane and he's going to solo it. Might not work out that way. He also has a weak base stat line. The 4/5 not going to carry us too far. We don't really like to play 4/5s for just their power output. We need a little bit of something else, which he can give in some scenarios. And then we also have to watch out about the reciprocal effect. It could backfire on us. I don't really love that it's actually hitting our side of the board as well. I think you're going to want to run Luke Cage a lot to help yourself, but it's also a counter. You're going to see when I bring up the counters that they're actually cards that can help you as well. They're good to run with this card. It's just kind of wacky because it works both ways. So anyways, those are my pros and my cons for Man-Thing. I genuinely, one of the biggest pros that I didn't even jot down here is I think it's going to be a fun card and it has incredible variance. So that gets me hyped up for this. Let's talk about some of those counters though, because there's some very interesting ones. All right, so check it out. So of course you have Enchantress, Echo. Rogue doesn't work here. It's a reciprocal effect. Don't bother roguing. Man-Thing, it wouldn't be worth it. But Enchantress, Echo, these can both turn off his effect. Luke Cage, great with your Man-Thing, great against you, because you want to turn it off so that it's only affecting your opponent's side, and then you can use Hazmat, all these other things. Then they're getting negatively afflicted like crazy, and it's going to be so much fun. I love that. But if they have Luke Cage, your entire deck shuts off, and that's going to happen in your conquest matches. You're going to run into that one opponent who just happens to be running Luke Cage, a cheap tech card that easily is played that you can't do much about. Is it worth maybe running Enchantress for that tech option that might pop up? Maybe, but if they play it into the Man-Thing location, you're going to turn off your Man-Thing at the same time hitting that Luke Cage? Doesn't seem all that great. Something to look out for there. Magneto's an interesting one because you probably played Man-Thing at a location where your opponent has stacked 1, 2, and 3 cost cards. And then if they pull it off, that could be pretty nasty. Maybe not the most consistent counter, but I could see Magneto working if it ever got popular, running a lot of those Lockjaw, etc. Another one is She-Hulk, and this goes for all those cards I was previously talking about, the Miles Morales, the Stature, those cards that can be played as a 1 cost, 2 cost, 3 cost, whatever it ends up being, played into the Man-Thing location without suffering the debuff. That's just a really nice way of working around this guy's effect. Another one, spicy alert here. We got Colossus. I know you don't see Colossus a whole lot, but man, I actually love this card as a 2-drop. He's not too expensive. You can play him into all those locations that, would normally destroy things like Altar of Death, etc. And he's going to do fine and maybe win it out. And then also we can play him into the Man-Thing, into those swamp locations, right? That sewer system and stuff that are all giving negative power. We can also play him with our Man-Thing, because we don't have to worry about that debuff if we didn't draw Luke Cage or anything like that. Colossus is kind of a champ when it comes to this card. Not that he's run almost ever. So those are just a few of the counters that I came up with, but I got some deck lists that I want to show you guys, so let's check it out. All right, so some key synergies. Green Goblin, #1 in my books, okay? Because we can throw that Goblin over, it's going to be -5 on our opponent's side of the board while we're putting up 5 power on our side of the board. It's just such a nasty swing, and it's taking up a spot on their side. So I love it. I love the Green Goblin. Also, it might, sway them from not wanting to play a lot of cards at that location because Man-Thing is there. So it probably makes it a lot easier for us to throw over the Goblin. Another thing is debris. Of course, debris. She's going to throw over those rocks. One rock lands at the Man-Thing location on their side and our side. So in a way, you got to watch out for that. But if we're running the appropriate tools to not worry about it, like Luke Cage or anything like that, then we should be just fine. Luke Cage right there, a good counter, a good synergy. Zabu, it's a 4 cost. We can discount with Zabu, so it can be at 3/5. And then we're talking some really, really good value. So I really like that synergy as well. And then Polaris is a nice one. You can play Polaris at the Man-Thing location. Yes, she will get the -2 debuff, but there might be a very important card that your opponent's relying on that you can then pull into the Man-Thing location and it starts getting that debuff. So I actually think that's a pretty spicy little key synergy there. Okay, let's talk about the deck. Some funny names here. So we got Swamp Money, Swamp A Cash Money. So this is basically a junk list, right? So we got the Hood and Viper to throw over the Hood, get that demon in our hand. That's great. We got Nebula to reap the rewards of just getting a lot of power over and over and over. I don't even mind playing Man-Thing into the Nebula location, just so that there's a little bit of pressure on our opponent to play cards there. Then we got Debris to throw over those rocks, which is always nice. Plays into the strategy of stuffing a bunch of things over on our opponent's side with that Green Goblin, that Hobgoblin, Viper over that Void from the Sentry maybe. And then we got Professor X and Daredevil combo to lock up a lane so that hopefully by turn 6, it's easy to read where our opponent's going to play, and we play Eliath to win the game. Seems pretty good. I think that's actually going to be a very strong list. I really enjoy that list right now, actually. It does pretty well in a lot of matchups. Another one is Toxic Evolution. So, and I should actually mention about the Swamp deck that Destroy decks typically do well against this because they can destroy the goblins, they can destroy the rocks and whatnot. So it might be worth thinking about putting armor in there somewhere. I find that can help. Okay, another one is Toxic Evolution. This is high evo list with the Thing, Abomination, Wasp, Cyclops, all these cards that deliver negative power from the high evolutionary. Then we also have Thanos giving us a bunch of stones and Lockjaw. So the idea is I use the stones to cycle with Lockjaw to get out those cards that are giving negative power. Even if it's Hazmat, doesn't matter because we want to get as much negative power out as possible so that our Abomination is cheap. Hopefully 0 cost and we can play it. Dr. Doom's there as another option. If it pops out from Lockjaw, that's great. Or we use it as a finisher if we have to. And then just good value cards. The Thing is still a very good value card. Cyclops, a very good value card. Jeff, very good card. I feel like this list just does pretty well on its own right, but it has that negative affliction side to it as well. And lastly, you got the Man-Bear Pig. So this concept is essentially using Darkhawk with Man-Thing and Iron Lad with all these cards because it works pretty well with Sabu. That was the idea that I came up with because Darkhawk's still a really good card. I find it's less popular now that Rock Slide was changed to a 3/3 and doesn't work with Sabu. We're going to use Man-Thing instead. Man-Thing, Iron Lad, Shang-Chi, and then Darkhawk on top of it. There's a lot of cards that are going to get discounted by our favorite Sabretooth. And then you got the core Rock Slide to throw the rocks in, and they got to play the rocks. That's going to suck for them. And then Shadow King as well is a nice finisher if we want to play Shang-Chi and Shadow King on turn 6 because Dr. Octopus, we're going to pull a bunch of cards out of our opponent's hand. And I actually really like that into the Man-Thing, possibly, especially if we know what kind of deck we're running into, or off of it so that we can use Shang-Chi to destroy that stuff, Shadow King to reset any power buffs. I think that could be really nasty. And America Chavez is there really just for deck consistency. So I think that also could be a very strong list. Now, the thing about all these lists, aside from the Swamp deck, do they need Man-Thing? I don't know yet. That's what we're going to find out. But is Man-Thing himself a snap or pass? All right, so I'm putting this card as a pass, and that's just me trying to be as honest as I can to those who may not have a lot of resources, right? There are not a lot of tokens to go around and are waiting for more exciting cards that are more in your wheelhouse. Me personally, why the asterisk is here is I'm going to pick up this card. I'm really excited about this card. If you think this kind of deck list or this kind of card could be fun in your collection, then I recommend picking it up because it is a Series 4 card. It's only going to cost you 3,000 tokens. And if you don't own those cards, the Spotlight cache is pretty solid. This is a really good week to open up some Spotlight caches. Now, none of these cards that you're seeing very meta relevant, very powerful. So you got to keep that in mind as well. So I'm just going to say that, you're not going to miss out on a whole lot if you decide to pass on Man-Thing. And actually, it's been data mined that in December, he's going to be in a Spotlight cache. So if you want to just wait a month or two until there's another opportunity to pick up this card, see how it does, that might be a pretty safe thing to do. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you didn't go check out my Elsa Bloodstone video on the official Marvel Snap channel, I have the link in the description. Go check it out. It was really fun being able to play with that card in advance. And that's why you gotta subscribe to this channel, man. We snap or pass all cards every week before a card comes out. I try to get the most information possible mechanically and just how these are going to play out in the game for you guys, so you can make that decision when you go to buy or pass. There we go. Boom. All right, thank you so much. Have a great day, and I'll catch you guys next time.